We will now see the various options available in the indicator to customize according to our needs. So if we right click on the indicator and we open the indicator, the first option which we find is signal to show. Now this is currently set as default as all, but you can change it if you just want to have a look only at buy signals or sell signals. You can customize that. The next one which you have is whether you want the gap filter to be used or not. In this case, as a default, I've used the gap filter, which means that whenever a breakout happens and a signal is generated, it will first search whether the signal has been a gap up or a gap down, depending on the long or the short call in respect to yesterday. And it will only display those signals which have been a gap up or a gap down from the filtered list. Similarly, you have a filter here which is called the Phl filter. Now this is the previous high and low filter. So if this filter is enabled, then what happens is, when I'm mentioning both here, that means this filter is enabled. So whenever it is enabled, what happens is that out of the breakouts which happen in the day, it will only show breakouts where the price has broken above the previous day's high or the previous day's low. Similarly, the next line which you see is how many days to look back for Phl 1. As 1 is set as a default, that means it will start looking for the previous high and the previous low for the last day. So if you want to have it for the last 2 days, then you can make it 2. If you want it to have it further backwards, you can change this accordingly. Then the next filter which we have in use is the Gns filter. Now Gns stands for Just Nifty SAR. It is a concept which is developed by a person called Elango. It's a kind of a moving average which is calculated on the basis of the high, low and the close of the previous 5 bars. So I use this as a filter so that I get to see only breakouts which are in the favor of the moving average, which are above the moving average in case of longs and below the moving average in case of short. Then the next we have is a candle count filter, which is the minimum number of candles which the filter needs to show the alerts. Now this is very interesting. This is actually Deshma's concept, where he says that lesser the candle count, the stronger the move will be, because the move is fresh. So this filter actually helps you in deciding whether you should take a trade or not based on the candle count. If the candle count is low, it is definitely a good signal to take. Then the next one which we have is the Emi Crossover, where we use the 3 EMAs 5, 21 and 34, which is enabled here by default. The next which is of importance is which stop loss do you want to use. So here we are using a higher time frame stop loss, which is a 30-minute stop loss. This can be also changed to a Gns stop loss. Now Gns stop loss is a stop loss which is again calculated on the Just Nifty SAR. But the NimblrTA uses the HTS stop loss, so we can stick to that for the time being. Now the next segment which you see is a segment which can be customized for your alerts on your mobile. So similarly here you can define whether you want to receive the alerts only for gap ups and gap downs, you want to receive alerts for Phl, you want to receive the alerts for candle count, you want to enable the Gns, and whether you want the reason, the trigger reason. If you enable this, then the notification which you get will also tell you why that alert has come. So it will give you things like BU plus CCI 34 plus JNS, indicating which filter were used to produce that particular call. That is of importance here. Stars which are mentioned here, you can keep them as default. The stars actually will be used in the next version, the version 1 which is coming up shortly, where you can actually define to take trades based on the star rating. So you don't have to see anything else. If you just see the star rating, and based on the star rating, you will be able to take calls. In the next version, I'm also including the concept of narrow range 4 and inside bars, which will also help in filtering calls and getting good calls out of the many calls which are generated. These are the features of the indicators which can be very useful. I'll move to the last part now. Now you've got this option called get alerted on computer for signals. Now this is set as false. Earlier this was set as true when you get alerts on the screen whenever a breakout happens. But what we have seen is that if a connection is slow, or the data connection is slow, or the server is slow, this will freeze up MT4. You can keep it as false. And similarly, you have the option get notified on the MT mobile app. So this, if it is enabled, and if you have set a metacode ID in the notification area, you will start getting notifications on your mobile. Similarly, you can disable and enable the signals on email. Then the last part is to configure your fonts and colors, which are not very important currently. We can leave them as it is. So these are the features of the indicator. You can play around with them if you are comfortable. Otherwise, leave them as it is because this is set to the optimum right now.